I'm Soraya Linnell, and the day my family broke me wasn't the day they called me invisible. It was the night they proved it. I still remember standing in my father's hospital room, begging him to hold on, while my sister whispered outside the door, "Don't worry, once he's gone, everything falls to us. Us, not me, never me." She said it loud enough for me to hear, loud enough to let me know I'd never been part of their plans, only a shadow to step over. And the worst part? No one corrected her. Not my brother. Not my mother. Not a single person who should have stood for me. That was the night something inside me cracked so sharply, I thought it might echo. I didn't say a word. I just held my father's hand cold, fading, and realized that when he left, I'd be truly alone in a house full of people who shared my blood. I walked out of that room with one truth carved into me like bone. If they ever came for what he built, I'd be ready. The sun was barely over the ridge when I drove into Santa Fe, its dry heat slicing across my windshield like something determined to test me before the real trial even began. Today was the emergency board meeting for Energen Freight Solutions, the company my father carved out of dust and long-haul miles. 18 years of keeping its engine humming, from pre-dawn dispatch calls to late-night route failures, and yet my role had always been treated like a light switch essential. But unnoticed unless it failed. The adobe building rose from the red earth as if it had grown there, weathered but stubborn. In my bag, the wax-sealed envelope my father left me felt heavier than any document had a right to be. 2 years, and I still hadn't broken the seal. Inside the boardroom, 14 chairs formed a hollow circle. Gwen stood near the head of the table, bright and polished, soaking up the room's attention as easily as she breathed. My mother adjusted the edge of her silk scarf. Roman laughed at something nobody else found funny. Lucinda crossed her legs with practiced grace, her silver charm bracelet clinking like a quiet warning. Every gaze tilted toward Gwen, and at the far end, a lone empty chair waited for me. Malik Rowan, the CFO, offered a subtle nod, quick, nearly invisible, the kind only someone who has watched you work for years would bother to send. No one here knew about the anonymous email that hit my phone at 2:17 a.m., warning me entire teams were about to be cut without notice. No one knew Samuel, a driver who'd survived more winters on the road than I could count, had messaged begging me not to let the routes be sold off. And no one knew what I carried in my bag, something capable of shifting the balance of this entire room. The opening tension was clear. Gwen had the family. Orion Logistics was circling, and I held the final piece no one saw coming. I stayed in the far corner of the boardroom, close enough to hear everything, but far enough that no one expected me to matter. From where I sat, it was impossible to miss how the room tilted toward Gwen the moment she stepped forward. Her saffron blazer caught the overhead lights, glowing with the sort of confidence only someone certain of victory would dare to wear. My mother leaned toward Lucinda, whispering just loud enough for the words to travel. Gwen was born for leadership. Soraya belongs behind the curtain. Lucinda nodded, her silver charms chiming in. In a rhythm that felt rehearsed, Roman adjusted his tie, amusement pulling at his mouth as he added that I'd been swallowed by operations too long to understand vision. I'd heard versions of those lines all my life, but today they landed differently, sharp, dry, and intrusive, like desert thorns catching skin. Then something on the table caught my eye. A proxy packet, half open. 3 signatures stared back at me: Mother, Roman, Lucinda. They'd handed Gwen their votes before the meeting even began. Not a discussion, not a doubt, just blind allegiance dressed up as confidence. A buzz spread through the board as phones lit up. Orion Logistics had leaked word they were preparing an acquisition offer the moment a new leader agreed to a structural adjustment. The message was clear: layoffs, closures, gut the company from inside out. Someone here had been speaking to Orion, someone close enough to orchestrate timing. My phone lit with a message from Malik. "When you're ready," a short line, but I understood him. He wasn't urging, he was waiting. Still, readiness wasn't a flicker, it was a threshold. And I hadn't crossed it yet, not until every chair subtly angled toward Gwen as she prepared to speak. The room had already crowned her. Their unity didn't crush me, it clarified everything. They didn't know what I carried. They didn't know what my father left behind. They didn't know how much they were about to regret choosing her over me. Before Gwen clicked to her first slide, I let my hand brush the sealed envelope inside my bag. The wax felt cool, untouched. My father's last instruction echoed silently in the back of my mind. Open it when you truly need it. For years, I didn't. This morning, I finally understood why he'd trusted me to know the moment. Gwen launched into her pitch, and the first blow landed instantly. She outlined a plan to cut the West Route team, the same group the anonymous email warned me about before dawn. She spoke of layoffs as if she were pruning a tree, not uprooting people's lives. Mother nodded. Roman looked impressed. A few board members exchanged looks of cautious approval. But cold dread settled over me. Then the second hit came selling 2 freight centers. Centers I knew without a margin of error were posting record profits. Gwen framed them as liabilities. That wasn't a mistake. It was preparation. She wasn't restructuring. She was clearing the path for a sale. My gaze drifted to Lucinda, still twirling her charm bracelet. It wasn't nerves. It was anticipation. My phone buzzed again. Another anonymous message appeared. Check Lucinda's chain. My eyes returned to her bracelet, to the tension in her fingers each time Gwen spoke of closures. The message wasn't about jewelry. It was about who wore it, about who had been opening doors for Orion. I didn't open the envelope, not yet, but I knew the exact moment when I would, when it would change everything. Gwen rose from her chair with the crisp certainty of someone stepping into a spotlight she believed was designed for her. The sound of her heels striking the wooden floor landed like final verdicts, each one tightening the air inside the Santa Fe boardroom. Sunlight spilled through the tall windows behind her, draping her in a warm border that made her look almost untouchable. My own shadow stretched thin across the table, long and fading, as if the room had already decided where I belonged. She adjusted her saffron blazer with deliberate confidence and announced her intention to call for a vote, naming her the next CEO of Energen Freight Solutions. The board straightened in their seats, leaning forward as if she were unveiling the answer to every problem we'd ever had. I felt the heaviness settle in my chest, slow and familiar. Not fear, not shock, just the dull recognition of what it felt like when the people who claimed to know you chose someone else before you even arrived. My mother nodded eagerly, her approval unmistakable. She insisted Gwen had been ready for this for years. Roman joined in, arms crossed with smug ease, remarking that Energen needed a leader with broader vision than what operations had ever required. I didn't bother offering even a flicker of reaction. Silence was my shield. They had never understood its strength. Then Gwen exposed the foundation of her confidence. She raised a bundle of proxy forms, signatures from my mother, from Roman, and from Lucinda stacked neatly and proudly in her grasp. 46% of the vote. Already secured. The next blow followed cleanly. Gwen outlined her reorganization plan, stating that the company needed someone more adaptable than the current COO. She didn't speak my name, but she didn't need to. It was printed in every expression around the table. Before anyone could digest the bluntness of her intention, phones across the room buzzed. A memorandum of understanding from Orion had been delivered simultaneously to every board member. A scheduled negotiation Gwen had arranged 5 days earlier was detailed in black and white. Confusion rippled through the room. Then suspicion, sharp and rising. Malik's gaze slid toward mine, steady and knowing. He made a small adjustment to his tie, a subtle movement I had seen him make only when he was bracing to reveal something carefully kept hidden. I gave no signal in return. The moment had not yet ripened. Gwen reached her final slide, detailing a proposal to terminate the COO. My name glowed on the screen, harsh under the desert sun that slanted through the windows. For a long moment, the room held its breath. I didn't. My hand drifted to my jacket pocket, pressing lightly against the sealed envelope tucked within. My father's final message, my last untouched inheritance. It waited patiently. Just as I had, its time was approaching. The fire Gwen said in that room had finally reached the point where I understood exactly how it needed to burn. I rose from my chair slowly, deliberately, letting the scrape of the legs drag attention back from Gwen's glowing slide to the far end of the table. I didn't lift my hands, didn't clear my throat, didn't speak. I simply stood and looked at each person who had spent years shaping me into a shadow they assumed would never step into the light. The quiet unnerved them more than any argument could have. Ramon let out a short, uncomfortable laugh, attempting to brush the tension aside. He said I shouldn't be dramatic, that this was standard procedure. I let the words pass through me. They were not new. They no longer had the power he believed they carried. My mother delivered her strike next, sharp and public. She claimed I lacked the presence required to lead, that I was suited to the back rooms and coordination desks. I felt the old wound open again, but this time the pain hardened into resolve rather than doubt. Lucinda added her own cut, her charm bracelet glinting as she spoke. She implied I lacked strategic instinct, that no one here expected me to understand what needed to be done. Her tone was too practiced, too casual. And in that moment, the anonymous warning about her bracelet echoed in my mind with absolute clarity. Roman wasn't finished. He brought up the year I was removed from the CEO shortlist a decade ago, painting it as proof of inherent inadequacy. The board turned toward me, waiting to see me crumble under the weight of their shared dismissal. But inside me, something braced instead of breaking. A second alert from Orion vibrated through the room. The message requested a meeting with Energen's new leadership within 72 hours. The timing was precise, the implication unspoken but unmistakable. A sale was imminent if Gwen secured the chair. The realization clicked into place like a lock. I stepped forward and placed the sealed envelope on the table. It landed softly, yet the sound cut through the room sharper than any shouted protest. I told them my father had prepared for this moment. Gwen laughed, high and brittle. Roman folded his arms with irritation. Lucinda's bracelet flashed under the sun, her expression tightening. My mother's hand trembled at her chest. I broke the wax seal. The soft crack carried through the room like the snap of a bone. And everything, absolutely everything, went silent. The sound of the wax seal breaking was small, almost delicate. Yet it moved through the boardroom like a seismic crack. Conversations died mid-breath. Lucinda's bracelet stilled against her wrist. Roman leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Gwen froze with her fingers curled above the table, as if the air had turned solid. I unfolded the document slowly, letting the truth settle before speaking. This is the transfer of operating authority my father signed 19 months ago. My voice was too calm for the storm it unleashed. Gwen shot up from her chair, insisting he hadn't been lucid then. Grasping for a lie she hoped the room would believe. I didn't respond. Instead, I nodded at Malik. He rose without hesitation and tapped his laptop. The screen brightened with a video of my father clear-eyed, steady-voiced, reading the date and signing the document with deliberate certainty. No confusion, no doubt, just the man they all claimed to honor, speaking for himself. The board erupted in whispers. He's completely coherent. This is legitimate. Gwen gripped the edge of the table until her knuckles whitened. I pointed to the clause, naming the sole holder of the authority to appoint the next CEO. Not my mother, not Gwen, not Roman. Me? Lucinda's jaw tightened. Whatever plans she had built beneath the jingle of her silver charms were collapsing in real time. A board member then revealed he'd received a copy from my father's attorney before his death, but stayed silent to see who acted for the good of the company. The room shifted. My family sagged. I unfolded the handwritten note tucked inside. My father's lettering wavered slightly, but held firm. Soraya understands Energen's heartbeat. This road belongs to her. My mother covered her mouth. Gwen didn't move at all, like disbelief itself had pinned her in place. And then Malik stepped forward. For transparency, he said. We should also review system logs. He displayed 14 months of data, every major improvement, every cost-saving initiative, every strategic upgrade, all initiated and approved by me. Not Gwen. Not a committee. Me. A few board members turned toward me with new eyes, less dismissal, more recognition. The room had begun to pivot. Gwen stepped forward, trembling but clinging to control. Even if the documents are real, Soraya hasn't proven she can lead. The last month's performance barely shows improvement. I opened my files. Malik switched the screens. The cool glow washed across Gwen's face. As the truth replaced her narrative, I walked them through the data. 14 months of operational reports. AI tracking cutting wear by 18%. Westroute performing at 98% reliability. The two centers Gwen pushed to sell, delivering their highest profits in a decade. A board member asked why those numbers weren't in Gwen's reports. She faltered, color rising and then draining from her cheeks. Malik opened a hidden folder 3 profit reports Gwen had buried to make those centers look unviable. Several gasps rippled across the table. Once Lucinda squeezed her bracelet until it clicked sharply. I presented the new maintenance contract, saving $6 million annually. Selling those centers, I explained, would dissolve that agreement instantly. Another board member muttered that Gwen's proposal would have gutted the company. Then I placed my father's hand-drawn route map on the screen. He had circled those same centers with the word "keep" written beside them. Not based on projections, based on instinct, only decades of experience could form. Silence thickened. Finally, I revealed the anonymous email. Onto the screen appeared the thread between Gwen and Orion. "They won't see it coming." Orion's reply, "We finalize once you take the chair." My mother clutched her chest. Roman pushed his chair back. A board member spoke the truth aloud. "She tried to sell us out." Lucinda went still. Gwen stepped back, her face collapsing as the room finally saw her clearly. And just like that, the balance shifted entirely into my hands. The boardroom felt suffocating after Gwen's emails flashed across the screen. Every person in the room stared at her as if seeing her for the first time. She tried to insist the messages were faked, her voice trembling. But Malik tapped a key, and the metadata appeared: timestamps, IP origins, verification logs. The truth was undeniable. Roman's voice cracked when he demanded to know if she had traded the company for a title. Gwen's defenses shattered. She cried out, asking why nothing she did was ever enough, why our father always seemed to choose me. It was the rawest thing she had ever said. My mother rose, heartbreak heavy in her voice as she told Gwen she had wounded everyone who trusted her. The moment felt like the final thread in our family snapping. A board member moved to suspend Gwen immediately. Lucinda was questioned next. Malik revealed security footage of her meeting with Orion. She collapsed into her chair. Exposed. Then all eyes turned to me. "If you have a proposal, now is the time." I chose leadership over revenge. I presented a 5-year plan built on strengthening drivers, expanding our profitable centers, and protecting every worker Gwen targeted. Silence followed, then the board called for an immediate vote. Hands rose across the table, even my mother's. I won unanimously. After the vote, the boardroom felt stripped to its bones. The pride Gwen wore like armor was gone. Roman's arrogance had dissolved. Lucinda's smug confidence had evaporated into a hollow stare. All the noise, all the posturing, all the games, they'd fallen away, leaving only truth standing in the center of the room. Gwen looked at me, her eyes shining, but not with regret. It was the look of someone who'd lost the one thing she thought would finally make her whole. Her voice cracked as she asked what I wanted from her. I answered softly, "I never wanted power. I just wanted Dad to see me." The words hit her harder than any accusation. My mother covered her mouth as tears broke free, admitting she had pushed us both into roles neither of us asked for, setting expectations that fed the rivalry she now regretted. The board moved with swift clarity. Lucinda was stripped of her voting rights and removed from the council, an overdue cleansing of rot long ignored. Malik then recommended formalizing the transfer of authority exactly as my father intended. The board approved without hesitation. Then it was my turn. I proposed not casting Gwen out, but offering her the role of chief strategy advisor under board supervision. Gasps filled the room. I didn't do it for Gwen. I did it for the man who raised us to preserve, not destroy. As we prepared to adjourn, Malik handed me a worn USB, a final message from my father. His voice came through weak but clear. "If you're hearing this, the time has come. Lead with your heart." For the first time all day, I cried. 6 months later, Energen Freight Solutions posted the highest quarterly profit in its history. The West route ran at full strength with perfect reliability. Our first class of young driver trainees filled all 12 slots, their energy breathing new life into the company. Older drivers came in for their quarterly health checks without worrying about cost for the first time in years. And Gwen sent me a brief email, just a few lines, but honest. It was more than I expected, and exactly enough. One evening, I drove to the old rest stop off I-25, the one my father used to favor back when he still hauled freight himself. The dusk wind swept across the southwest plain, carrying the familiar scent of warm dust and engine heat. It pulled memories from corners of my mind I hadn't visited in years, me sitting beside him in the cab, feet not yet touching the floor. Listening to him talk about roads like they were living things, I opened his journal, flipping to the page he had marked. His handwriting, tired but steady, read, "Light the road for others, and you'll never lose your way." I closed the book and looked toward the highway just as a line of Energen trucks rolled past, their headlights cutting long paths across the asphalt. The glow stretched toward me like a thread, one that began in my father's hands and now rested in mine. His road had become mine to carry forward.